Okay, and welcome to day 2 of the P7 project. Today we're going to build up our lid with some sandwich construction, and we're also going to do another layup making our U-channel so that we can finish up the components we need for our toolbox. So we're going to start with a piece of foam, 3.5 by 6.5 inches long. We're going to put it into a jig, and what we're going to do is we're going to use the hot wire unit, and so we're going to cut some shape into it. We're going to have tapers on both sides, and then we're going to go into our second jig to put taper on the other edge. So you can see he's holding his piece of foam nice and solid, and he's just gently pushing the cutting wire through it. Don't push too hard or you end up breaking the wire. And so now, second piece, we're going to have to kind of see and set the angle and run the cutting tool just along the edge. You can see he's gone halfway with one edge, and then so he maintains his angle, he's coming in from the other edge. Okay, we're going to do that on both sides. And that's going to set us up for a nice tapered piece of styrofoam that we're going to use for our construction. Now we're going to cover up our mold that we're going to use for the U-channel. So same process as before. We're going to tape a piece of 2-inch tape, roll it in, make sure that that's properly sealed. The edges aren't so critical because we're just going to be laying on top. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put vinyl tape over top of our lid. What this is going to do is it's going to protect the lid during the layup of the sandwich construction. We just don't want any excess epoxy making its way onto that lid and ruining the finish. Okay, so we're going to just quickly trim it. Very small overlap in between each layer just to make sure that we're properly sealing it. And about 3 or 4 pieces should do the job. A little bit overhang on the end, fold the edges down, and we're ready to go. Okay, a little bit more detailing here, just trim the excess off. And again, this is just a protective layer so that we end up with a nice finish on the top of our lid. Okay, now we're ready for carrying out the build-up for our sandwich construction. And so the first layer that he's putting down is just sort of a protective layer. And we're going to wet that out. You can see it was just cut from a little bit of scrap. It's a little on the rough side, but nicely laid out there, nicely laid up. It's completely clear. That's the nice thing about the fiberglass. You can tell once she's wetted out. The next layer will be a bias layer. Now the bias layer is put in there. We're going to have a bias, we're going to have another straight cut, and then another bias. And that's going to allow us tomorrow when we start doing the repair to be able to tell which layers we're going through as we're doing the repair. So again, it's going to peel it back nice, well wetted out. That's bias, that's straight. And so he's going to put the straight cut layer in. We're going to wet that one out fully. And that's going to allow us to be able to see that actual change in the direction of fiber as we start sanding through when we do our repair. Okay, carefully peel it back. Put in our last layer of bias. There we go. Now, when he gets to this layer, he's going to, again, probably put a little bit more pressure on the squeegee as he's moving the epoxy around. What he's going to try and do is, again, pull out any excess epoxy. We're not going to go too crazy heavy on it, but you can see there he's moving the excess epoxy towards the top of the wet-out envelope. Looking nicely wetted out. And so now what we're going to do, again, is we're going to cut the material clean. That way we've got almost like a pre-preg. It'll allow us then to package this thing up. And what we're going to do next is we're actually going to put it into a plastic container, and we're going to take it off to the freezer, and we're going to allow it to sit there until at such a time as we're ready. Notice he's, in essence, putting his name on the envelope. He's going to fold that up, and he's going to carry that down to our freezer so that it's ready when we need it. Okay, it's put away. So the next thing we're going to do is put on a new piece of plastic, a new envelope. Again, put down some epoxy. We're going to be running carbon fiber here. So again, we're going to work that carbon or the epoxy up through the carbon fiber. Nicely done, fully wetted out. Carefully pulls that off. We're going to put on 1 layer carbon fiber, 4 layers of fiberglass. This is the lighter 7-ounce fiberglass. And then we're going to finish it up with a top layer of carbon fiber. So I'm not going to show you all the other layers. There was a fiberglass there. And now we're ready for our last layer. So he's going to put some epoxy down. He's going to place the carbon fiber on top. Last layer. It's going to work that up and through the carbon fiber. So she looks good, fully wetted out. And once again, just like before, we're going to cut this clear of the wetting envelope, both layers, so that we've got our finished product. There we go, trim her up. And then we're going to lay that over top of our small U-channel mold. There's the U-channel mold. Peel the first layer off. Doesn't matter which way you lay this thing down because it's the same build up either way. Make sure it's well centered, equal material on either side. Fold it down, pull that second top layer of plastic off. So you're looking at pure carbon fiber. And then we're going to lay our perforated ply over top of that and our layer of breather bleeder, and then we're going to tuck that into our vacuum envelope. Next thing we're going to do is grab that lid, and we're going to mark off a 1/2 inch from the top edge, and we're going to put a little mark on the fiberglass. That way we know where to position our styrofoam core material. Okay, we're going to lay down some epoxy into our lid. Now this area had peel ply on it before to give us a nice rough finish. So we're going to put some epoxy in there so we get a good tie-in between the core and the lid. And so we're actually going to add a little bit more epoxy to the core itself. Going to butter it up both top, bottom, and sides so that, again, we get good contact between the covering layers and the core itself. So we're going to position that, look for that 1/2 inch mark across the top, kind of centered right in the middle. Okay, we are ready for our covering layers. So go to the freezer, pick up your bag, bring it back probably a few minutes before we do this. That way it has a chance to thaw out a little bit. Don't open the bag too early because we don't want to run the risk of moisture buildup because of it being cold. Now we're going to lay that into the buildup with equal overlap on both sides. Notice how you had to kind of fold a little bit of extra material up over the top. Get rid of that top layer of plastic. Okay, that comes out, and then work the entire edge down all the way around your buildup. Okay, just making sure everything's sitting super flat and that the core is still in the position it should be in. Now he's going to cover it with perforated ply, trimming the corners at 45 so that we get a nice lay of the perforated ply. With the change in height, you're going to end up with wrinkles in the corner if you don't cut those sections of perforated ply and then kind of fold one on top of the other. There it is, nicely laid up, ready for breather bleeder. We're going to put that together, again, equally covering the material, and we're ready to go into the vacuum bag. So we're going to put it in there. We're also going to put another layer of breather bleeder on top of that flange just because it's been trimmed and so it's a little on the sharp side. We're going to make sure that our countertop is perfectly clean so that we get a good seal. Yeah, make sure that there's no signs of any epoxy or fibers or anything there. We're going to start by putting the edges down. Work towards the middle, always a good idea. In this case, he ended up with a little excess, and so we're just going to make, in essence, another pleat in the middle. So push that down, make sure that it's well sealed. As the vacuum starts to kick in, make sure we've got lots of excess material to roll around the top flange and to cover our U-channel. So yeah, he's making sure, again, we're well placed over top of the core. We've got excess material for our U-channel. Yeah, it's going to make sure everything's sitting nice, but not pulling. We don't want anything overly tightened up or pulling. There we go. Nice, even layup. That's great. And it's got good vacuum, so that's great. So that's the end of day 2. Tomorrow we'll start the repair portion of this project. So clean up, help everybody get a good seal, and we'll see you tomorrow.